Hey there, everybody. This is SXE Blues, and I'm bringing you part 8 of my Star Trek retrospective. Uh, Once again, this is just my personal favorite moments from all 11 of the Star Trek features, and some of them will be the iconic big ones that are familiar even to the layman, so to speak, the casual viewer. But hopefully, there'll also be plenty of smaller more minuscule moments that just stand out to me personally, that you'll find interesting, or maybe they stood out to you. So again, this is part 8, which features the first all Next Generation cast Star Trek film, First Contact. And I remember seeing this one in the movie theaters. One of the first ones I actually saw in the theaters, I believe. But moving on to getting to the first moment that I want to reference is the very beginning of the film. We're somewhat taken aback by a nightmare that Captain Picard is having, calling back to the Next Generation series, the two-part episode, The Best of Both Worlds, when he is kidnapped by the Borg and made one, essentially. He's turned into Locutus, who they hope to be, their kind of their leader. At that point in the Next Generation series, there's no Borg Queen. She debuts in this film and is quite a stunning revelation. But this nightmare sequence is very shocking. You can kind of get a sense at the sort of surreal way it's filmed that this is a dream sequence, but the most shocking moment comes when, and I think I found an image, I'm recording this not looking at them, so I tried to have a loose idea of which scenes I was going to mention, and then I went to find images, and now I'm just sort of talking off the top of my head, unscripted, trying to remember them all. But when there's this few-second moment just before he wakes up out of the seeming nightmare, when a drill bit is about to drill into his eye, and I assume remove it, to put one of those Borg eye pieces that cover half the face, and it's just very startling. And then, adding insult to injury, immediately thereafter, we find out that he did not wake up out of the nightmare. It's still going, and then he genuinely wakes up with an incoming emergency message. But this is a perfect segue to the second scene I want to mention, which I'll loosely reference as "We have engaged the Borg." Essentially what this is, the message that Picard receives is that in fact the Borg are heading toward Earth, and there's a stronghold of Federation ships. Enterprise is not there because the Admiralty of the Federation and Starfleet are calling into question whether Picard would be effective enough, because at one time he was being controlled by the Borg. I think they are fearful that, could there be repercussions if they let him charge into battle and get into a close proximity with the Borg again. So the Enterprise is listening to what's going on with the other Federation ships, and most of them get wiped out pretty quickly. And this, at the point when Picard has had enough, he's heard enough, and he says, I'm going to defy orders, and we're going to go in and we're going to deal with the Borg. And as the shot, if I remember correctly, the one that I picked, is essentially the Enterprise shows up on the scene and starts kicking Borg ass. And there's, of course, the really cool reference to Deep Space Nine and the return of the character Worf, who's captaining the Defiant from the Deep Space Nine series. And so this brings him back into the fold, since he was originally on the Next Generation as well. And for that reason, it's just a great, epic, space battle. Doesn't last very long, and it's really just setting up the parameters of where we're going to go next in the story. But to see this all play out on the big screen, and to see the Enterprise E, that's one thing I want to mention. The Enterprise E is a magnificent I like the Enterprise E better than the D, frankly. I just think it looks very sleek and very awesome, and this is the first film we see it in, and to see it charging into battle, epic way to begin to see that ship in action. But moving on from there, once the crew have gone back in time following the Borg, and they're trying to piece together exactly what the Borg are up to, and essentially what they want to do is stop First Contact, the epic point in Trek history when, after a Third World War and the Eugenics Wars, Earth is, the people of Earth are kind of like on their last legs to a degree. They're trying to build up from the bottom again. And it turns out we have Zefram Cochrane, who is he invented warp travel. And his first flight calls attention to an alien race for the first time, and thus First Contact. Our first contact as humanity, as a sole world in all the universe. Finally, we have first contact with aliens from another planet, and this confirms that there's more going on in our galaxy and in the universe. And so yeah, it's a monumentous moment, but I'm going to bypass when we first meet Cochrane because though that's somewhat humorous, the part that stands out to me as being a lover of the character from the Next Generation series. He wasn't a mainstay character, but did appear in several episodes. Reginald Barclay, as played by Dwight Schultz from formerly as Mad Dog Murdoch on the A-Team, and was subsequently one of my favorite characters on the show. He has he's got to come over and get approval for something he's working on with LaForge, and LaForge just happens to be talking to Cochrane, and there's just this great moment. His stammering, nervous Barclay is, can I shake your hand, Mr. Cochrane? I can't believe I'm meeting you. Oh my goodness, and it's just really charming and funny, and a definite throwback to people who have watched The Next Generation. This movie, there are little elements like that where if you are familiar with The Next Generation, you'll get the joke. But then there are things that are universally, funny or dramatic that show up in the film as well. But it's just a quirky, cute little moment that I think is funny. Moving on from that, the scene I want to mention comes a little into the story when there's a point where they have to get everybody off the ship. The Borg have infested the Enterprise, and I don't remember exactly why they had to get everybody off the ship, but the Borg are trying to control the Enterprise, and they kidnap Data, the android, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with Star Trek. And Data's primary goal is to try to become as human-like as he can. This being the character's inspiration since his inception, so to speak. But there's this intriguing point when we finally meet the Borg Queen for the first time, and that, the way she debuts, kind of like coming down from the ceiling as just the top half of a body, and then it fits into the bottom half, is intriguing enough as it is. But the idea of that she tries to seduce Data with this, they remove the artificial outlining of his body and try to graft a simulation of skin, and it's just this idea of seduction toward trying to bend Data to her will and make him, essentially be her unwitting pawn in trying to make history bend toward the Borg's will, so to speak. And it's just very intriguing. The next scene I want to mention comes when Riker and LaForge and some of the Enterprise crew have assisted Zefram Cochrane in getting his ship, his first warp flight ship, the Phoenix, ready to fly. And it's the iconic scene that begins, and I keep saying iconic and epic and all of these things, but taking in the mind frame of the history of Star Trek, the building blocks of Star Trek. This is a key moment. So, for me, as a Trekkie, it's monumentous. But it's the first flight of the Phoenix, essentially, and after it's the great Steppenwolf song that blasts as it's lifting off, and then when they're in space and they go to warp, the warp nacelles come out from the sides of the ship. I just love the way the Phoenix looks, and being aware of the essentially the original series, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, would not be able to come to exist had this moment not happened. And there's a little bit that comes after where it seems like Data is bending toward the Borg Queen's will, and Picard has gone to try to save him, kind of similarly to how he tries to sacrifice himself for Geordi LaForge in the previous film. But the Borg Queen will have none of that, even though he says, you can reform me into Locutus again. I'll do what I'll do your bidding. And she, at this point, says, I don't need you anymore. I have Data here. Data's bent to my will, or so it seems. And she orders Data to destroy the Phoenix. And this very cool segment where he fires photon torpedoes, but they just miss, and the Phoenix goes to warp for the first time. And essentially they beat the Queen, and not to ruin the movie for you, but it's just a really great movie all around. And the final scene that I want to mention is the first contact itself. I remember going into this wondering who of all the Star Trek aliens, who is it that we meet first, that humanity meets first? And I rounded it down to two. I thought were the likeliest. One being the Klingons, and the other being the Vulcans. And it just, for me, those were essentially, I believe, the first two big, if you will, aliens in the Star Trek universe. So they were the likeliest as far as I was concerned. And as it turns out, again, spoilers, for those of you who haven't seen, but if you're even vaguely familiar with Spock, he's a Vulcan, and so it's somewhat monumental that the first alien culture we meet after Zefram Cochrane's first warp flight ends up being the Vulcans. And it's the dramatic moment when the Crimson Vulcan ship comes and lands, and the first Vulcan comes out, and we don't know that they're Vulcans at this point because they're hooded and robed, and but you're kind of getting the vibe of what's going on. And the first of the Vulcans come over to Cochrane, who's kind of at this point representing humanity since he piloted the Phoenix. And it's just all around a fantastic moment when the Vulcan pulls the hood back, and you see those pointed ears that are akin to Vulcan culture, and or the Vulcan species, and he does the live long and prosper hand sign, and Cochrane attempts to do that, but he knows he'll never get it right, so he just puts his hand out to shake hands with the Vulcan. And it's just really a great moment to, this is a moment on film that captures essentially the birth, if you will, of the Star Trek universe. Without this moment, none of it would exist. So to have the Next Generation crew so integral into saving that moment from being erased from history by the Borg, the whole movie, there's a lot of action and there's a lot of tensity to it, and it's a great film. But that's pretty much the last scene I wanted to mention with First Contact, and I'll be presently getting to my next chapter, which is featuring Insurrection, the next film in the Next Generation film series. So stick around, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. This is SXE Blues signing off.